we finally got to this point, haven't we, where we felt it was time for the Growing Your Own Money podcast to get a third person view, to get a special guest.
Yeah.
And we feel like we're building a bit of momentum now, don't we? So people are starting to have good conversations on the back of the pod, they're learning things, they're asking where they can go with their money and what they might be able to do and how that relates to their life, their career, their business, what they might be doing. But we are very, very pleased, aren't we, to be joined by an Olympian, a sports person and a business person.
Yeah.
Jack Beaumont, who works for Invesco. Welcome.
Yeah, thanks very much for having me. I'm a listener of the podcast too, so I spend a lot of my time now driving between different financial advisors, companies all around the country, and it's, the Growing Your Own Money podcast is a great one for when I've got a good journey to do. So thanks for doing it and keep it up.
Thanks for supporting. Yeah, it's good because we want to be educational in what we do. We're not really selling anything other than what we're trying to put out there so that people know a little bit more about how to grow their own money.
Yeah, I think that's a really nice thing.
Yeah.
You know, I work as a salesperson, and I don't think necessarily the best way to sell something is to try and sell something.
Yeah. I
think you sell your services and your knowledge or your organisation's expertise, and then hopefully that then leads to the selling kind of doing itself. So I can imagine hopefully some of the listeners here will think, oh, you know what, maybe I could do with a hand from these very, very smart people and come and get in touch.
Yeah, thank you. So let's start at the end, which is the medal.
Indeed.
Have we got a good photo of it? Have we got it on the camera?
We'll have them popping up. If you're watching on YouTube, we'll have them popping up.
So we've got this heavy silver medal sitting in the table, which we're very privileged to have and see. And very few people in the world have them, relatively speaking.
Yeah.
So tell us what you won it for and then take us back to the start of the journey. So start at the end and then go.
So I won a silver medal in rowing at the Tokyo Olympics. This was in an event called the men's quadruple scull. So if you're not a rowing fan, that's 4 people with 2 oars each. You go backwards for about 2,000 meters, so 2 kilometers, and there are 6 boats in the race. We absolutely nailed it as hard as we could from stroke 1 of that race.
Really?
We agreed as a team that if we're going to try and do an upset here. We were expected to come 3rd or 4th, really off on paper.
Okay.
We thought if we can sort of throw everyone a bit, maybe knock them off their game, let's see what happens.
Yeah.
We might go too hard and come 6th, in which case we know we've tried everything and 6th is still pretty good. But if we get it right, we might be able to just beat everyone's expectations of us, and we did. I'm so proud of it.
Yeah.
But it was a long journey, right? And it wasn't a smooth one. I think that's very important in sort of all walks of life, and definitely now in what I do, you see it, like things like people's investments don't just go from 0 or from £1 to 1 million in a straight line. It is a very, very sort of bumpy ride. The trend goes up, but it's a bumpy ride.
Yeah.
And my life as a rower was definitely like that.
Yeah.
So I was introduced to the sport by my dad. It was something we kind of did together a bit. He used to be a very good rower himself. He competed in the Seoul Olympics. Didn't quite manage a medal.
Right.
He finished 4th, and I still remind him I was better than him. It was definitely
on the shoulders of giants.
Well, I would never have got there without him, and he was a great supporter. He was my first coach as well, and without him, I'd never have fallen in love with the sport. I did fall in love with it, so I learned to row at Maidenhead Rowing Club, which is my local club. I'm still a member now, and it was really just what I did after school with my mates. Kind of you might play rugby, you might play football. I went down the rowing club, and my first I guess rowing story is that at a young age when I started, I was 10. You race in mixed categories, so all the boys and girls are linked together. And in our first race, I had a team of just boys, and we got through to the final of the race against the team of just girls, and we thought that's it. We're going to walk to our first victory here, but no, we lost by about half the course.
Wow.
And I took an early retirement from running there and then. That was it. It was like, okay. But I did get brought back into it, and again by my dad, because there was another local race in Marlow, which is around the corner. And this time, and someone was sick and I couldn't do it. My dad said, "Oh, Jack, come on, you still know how to row. Why not do this race?" And I did it. We won this time. There's also a fun fair at Marlow, so I got to have a burger, an ice cream, and go on a health scale. So I thought, you know what, this sport is pretty good. I guess so over the next few years as a teenager, it started to be a bit more of a hobby that kind of got out of hand. Right. So it started once a week, twice a week, up to sort of 12 times a week by the time I was leaving school. But the year I left school was a real turning point because it was also the year of the London Olympics. So for me, it was a hugely inspiring thing. The rowing happened just around the corner at Dorney Lake near Eton College. So for me, that was 6 miles from my house.
Wow.
I had tickets to go to one day of the heats. And so I went to go and watch, and it was just so cool to be at this. I'd been to that lake hundreds of times, but they'd built up massive stands at it. There were huge crowds of people. You knew the sort of gravity of what the race was going on. This is the Olympic Games. It's not just any old race. And I'm getting goosebumps now thinking of it, actually. And when I finished watching this racing, I went home, or went to go home, I really thought I want to go back and watch the finals, but I don't have tickets. But outside the lake, by Windsor Racecourse, there was a bunch of people flogging tickets, like ticket touts, for about 3 times the price. I've been working in a sports bar that summer during Euro 2012, and all the money that I'd saved, I spent on all the tickets for the rest of the week. So I went and watched it all, and it was amazing.
Caught the bug then, didn't you?
Absolutely.
Quite literally.
Yeah, and there was one moment that stuck out. There was a lady called Catherine Granger who she'd won silver medals in Sydney, Athens, and Beijing. And Beijing, her boat was winning until maybe the last 20 seconds, and the Chinese overtook them and they got silver. And okay, I'm very happy with my silver. They were gutted with theirs. All about perspective, right? What you're aiming for. But she won a gold medal in London, and I was there to watch it. And when I saw that happen, I was so inspired. I just thought I want to be doing that. And in 4 years' time, I want to be in the Olympic team. So I went home. I withdrew my university application that day. Told my mum, she went mental. By the way, she went absolutely mental. I decided that this is my plan. I'm going to do what it takes to get into the Olympic team, and that you can't do that halfway. Professional sport is very, very high level, and you have to commit. So that was it. It was, for me, that was my path.
So you were what I would call all in.
Yeah.
You went all in, and from that moment,
absolutely.
You got your eyes on the goal, which was to compete in 4 years' time.
Yeah.
And you absolutely committed to achieving that goal.
I figured that if I'm going to do it, firstly, it's something you can only do now. When you're young, you cannot be 40 years old and go, oh, you know what, I really wish I'd gone to the Olympics, let's start training now. You can't do that. You missed your opportunity. So you have to start early. You have to commit 100%.
So that was 2012, right?
2012.
2012.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so then what I did, I went through my university application.
Yeah.
I took a gap year. I joined a club called Leander Club, which is in Henley, where I work now, actually, in Henley. But this club is like the Real Madrid of rowing clubs, like really. So all of the sort of past greats like Steve Redgrave or Matthew Pinson, they're all members of the club. And you also get international rowers will come and train for a year because they want to come and train with that group. It's very, very high standard.
And when you say the Real Madrid, does that mean the equipment's of a high standard as well, Jack? Not just the people? Yeah,
at the club it works very well at the club because it's also a members club. So it's like a hotel, a restaurant, a bar, and a rowing club. So all of that stuff funds the rowing. So they have, the equipment there is exactly the same as what you'll see at the Olympics. It really is, you know, they're driving around in the F1, it's the equivalent of like the proper F1 cars, right? This is what we were rowing in. So we'd always turn up at every competition knowing we're in the best stuff. But also you had the best people there because success kind of breeds success, right? So if a club does very well, people want to be there, which makes it do better, and then people go, oh, that looks good, I'll go and join. And that's what it was for me. 50% of the Olympic team in London had come from that club, and I thought, well, pretty good odds if you go, you know, if you're going to make the Olympic team, you're most likely going to have come from that club. So I thought that's what to do. So I was training pretty hard. It was sort of 2 or 3 sessions each day, and really cracking on. I was working part-time as a boat builder as well, so that was how I kind of kept things going. But it was really fun. It took a couple of years though before I actually made an impact and really made it into being a full like senior international rower. So I spent 2 years training at the club, and after that time, so I was progressing. I was on a really quite steep trajectory, but I think the coaches wanted to see more, like a prolonged period of that. They don't want to see you just improve. They want to see how much can you improve, and they want you to stay there. Also, I was very young. A lot of the rowers, they kind of peak in their late 20s or early 30s, and I thought, but I kept thinking, come on, one day they're going to see my worth, and they'll bring me into the GB rowing team. And it happened after 2 years. I got a phone call from a guy called GYOMP, who used to be the head coach of the British rowing team. He was an old East German coach. And he called me up and he basically said, "No, I've been very impressed with some of your performances for the last few years. We'd like to bring you as the reserve for the World Championships this year." So I was basically on the bench. I was sort of the travelling squad that go to all of the pre-World Championship camp and off to the World Championships. I didn't race. I did get to race all of the other reserves from around the world, and I beat them all. So it's like I was the world champion of reserves in a way. It was pretty good.
And was that your motivation during that 2 years? Were those the little steps towards the big goal?
Yeah.
That kept you going?
Yeah. Well, that's a huge thing.
Yeah. Could you see that potential to become the reserve driver, as it were?
That year. That was a big aim for me. Was can I improve? I think sometimes your goals change as you move through a situation. Like you might start off like, I want to get here, and you realise what's realistic as you go. And to start with, it was each week, like, am I improving on we'd do a 30-minute test on the rowing machine every Wednesday. It was very hard. Is that improving? I'd have scores I'd like to get. And as I realised those were going quite well, it was then, okay, we'd have GB rowing team trials like 4 or 5 times a year. I could just go a bit higher up the rankings. Yeah. And then I realised that trying to be a reserve for the World Championships that year might be realistic for me. I probably won't get to be one of the actual selected boats, but if I can be the reserve, that's a foot in the door. Yeah. And so for me, that was my target was, can I be the reserve? Yeah. Basically, which was it was amazing, and it was such a good foot in the door because I went on the camps with the team, and at the end of it, then Jürgen said, "Great, we would love you to join the squad now to train full time with us all going forward." So then I trained at the club in Henley. Actually, the GB rowing team are based in Reading. Yeah. So really 5 to 6 miles away. So it wasn't a very big change for me. But that was when it really started being a full-time job. And I actually started being in a boat with my heroes. And that was a pretty amazing thing to do.
In a boat with your heroes.
Yeah. But a typical day. Typical day as an elite rower. It wasn't a crazy early start because it was our job. Yeah. Right. So most people, they go, "Oh, Rowan, you must get up at 5 a.m. We didn't actually, because we'd meet at 7:30. We'd do our first session in the gym. That would be at Bisham Abbey, which is it used to be where the England football team used to train, actually, near Marlow. We'd do an hour and a half weight session, really whole body exercises, or all of the body, and then we'd drive to the lake, have some breakfast and a bit of a rest, and we'd go out on the water and row for about an hour and 40 minutes, so about 20 kilometres. Not the hardest session, but a long one. And then you'd come in, have some lunch, maybe have a nap. There was a kind of a room with a load of bunk beds in where we could go and have a rest. And then you'd go back out and row for another 20 kilometres or on the rowing machine for an hour and a half. So it was 3 sessions each day. Probably twice a week we'd do some really spicy, hard training. Right. But the majority of it was just long duration, medium intensity, just building an aerobic endurance. Yeah. Now,
do you know that when you're in it? Do you know that that's what you're doing? Or does it get to a point where this is a bit of a slog? It's same old.
It's definitely same old. I think the thing is, like, Rome wasn't built in a day, right? You cannot just get from 0 to 100 without doing the work and taking the time. It doesn't just happen overnight. I wish it did. It would be amazing if it did. Yeah. But we had to train really hard, and there was no shortcut. And Jürgen would always remind us that we are building the building blocks to get to the top. You cannot just go straight to the sprint stuff and be the fastest rower. You have to build the endurance, and then we can build that on top. So through the year, we'd sort of add more and more intensity through, but most of the training was very, very monotonous and boring. Yeah. And you wouldn't think, oh, this is exciting or glamorous, or it was far from it. But we knew and we believed that it was what will get us where we want to be. And we did have the benefit that we had a coach and a system that had produced such excellent results before. Yes. So we trusted it. Yes. There was a process where you go, okay, I can't really see the results for myself right now, but I know this has worked for other people. And some of the people that I was with, I know it had already worked for them before. So it was kind of having to close your eyes and just trust it. I guess it's quite similar now. When I talk to a lot of advisors, I hear about people tracking their portfolios, and sometimes you might have a year where it doesn't really go up.
Yeah.
And you think, hey, what's going on? But you have to look back at what these things have done and just trust it, because over time it will happen. You just need to stay with it.
Yeah.
And even when you feel like it seems crazy to stay, sometimes you've just got to stay.
Yeah. Sounds like you've got both the individual, you as an individual, you've got the eyes on the prize. You've got a coach and a mentor that was helping you keep the eyes on the prize.
Yeah.
You've got the collective.
Yeah.
That was motivating each other to help you keep those eyes on the prize as well. And all of that combined was just helping you to keep going forward and push through those difficult, long, slogging days as well.
Exactly. And the thing that was a bit strange was basically all of our racing was in about 3 months of the year.
Right.
And then we'd have 9 months pretty much of just training.
Yes.
And so we'd race only about 4 or 5 times a year. It wasn't like when you watch football, there's every weekend they've got something big to be doing. So it meant that our races felt very important to us because there were so few, but also
quite precious.
Very, very precious. But also it was like we also felt very prepared for them, so that was quite nice. And but I've got a funny story about my first time I got to race for Great Britain as a senior rower. I was selected as a reserve for the European Championships. And then someone actually got injured, which was the kind of thing I always wished for, quietly.
Yeah.
And I raced in the European Championships. We got to the final. It was 2015. We were in Poland, and we raced our hearts out. And Russia shot out, Ukraine shot out with them, and we were really reeling them in for the last sort of 200 meters. And it finished in quite a blanket finish, but Russia won. I'm still waiting for my upgrade here, because I'm sure there was something going on with those. In fact, I know some of those athletes are implicated in the McLaren report, so I'm waiting for a silver medal in the post. Russia won, then Ukraine came second, and we came third. And we then went straight off the water to be confronted by a couple of cameras, 2 very large men with BBC microphones. It was Sir Matthew Pinson and Sir Steve Redgrave there to interview us, and I'd never had any sort of formal media training at that point, and what to do in these situations. And they started off, and the first thing they said was, "By the way, guys, this is live."
Wow.
So it was like just making sure that you're not swearing or whatever.
Yes.
And they asked the other 3 guys questions about the race and how different did it feel with Jack in a boat or whatever. And then they got to me, and Matthew said, "We might be showing our ages a bit here, but I think we used to row with your dad." And I said, "Well, I don't really know, because I never got to see my dad racing. He's a bit old." And Steve Redgrave said, "Well, he's not that old." And I turned around, I was a bit plucky and just won a bronze medal at the European Championships. I said, "Well, he's not as old as you." And when I got home from Poland that night, there was it was back before you really had data roaming on your phone.
Yes.
You didn't want to pay for it. And I turned on my phone by the sort of baggage carousel thing and just kept getting these texts through. "I can't believe you called Steve Redgrave old and easy." And then there was this video that was being shared on Facebook, and it had me saying, "Not as old as you" to Steve. Then it went black and white, Snoop Dogg music came on, and then like sunglasses came over my face, and a cigarette over my mouth, and it said, "Thug Life." Okay, that's
You went viral.
Yeah, well, within the sort of context of rowing viral, probably I'd imagine there was like 100 shares or something, but it was very funny and embarrassing. I wasn't sure where I was with it. It was quite cool. But that year, I really thought that winning a bronze medal at the European Championships might be my sort of breakthrough, but it wasn't. Went straight back to being a reserve after the other guy was better.
So you recovered.
And I just kept on knocking at the door, like not literally, I was just trying to show performances that would showcase why it should be me. And I think every single athlete backs themselves, that you wouldn't be doing it if you didn't. And I think you all would be able to explain like some data where you think, I should be the person for that, in the boat for that, for this reason, or for that reason, or for that reason. And coming up to that year's World Championships, we're 1 year before the Olympics, I was still not in the boat. I had a teammate called Angus who was about the same standard as me. We were both really sort of chomping at the bit. We just wanted to be racing. And at the World Championships, you cannot enter more than one of each boat. So whilst we were at the standard to probably be there, we couldn't go because the other 2-man boat was just slightly better most of the time. Yeah. And we were about 3 weeks out for the championships, and we were on a camp in Portugal. And there was going to be a day that we would do a full team sort of 2 kilometre race, and they would rank us all. So they kind of have these percentage gold medal times, which they base off the world record. So you can kind of compare different sizes of boats with each other.
Yeah.
So even though you might be in an 8-man boat or a 1-man boat, you know who's actually doing relatively better.
Yeah.
And we were doing this, but we were going to race against the other 2-person boat, the other double scull. And we were warming up in the morning. Me and Angus were we were really up for it.
Yeah.
Like, if we beat them here, there's no way they can't pick us for the World Championship, so they're going to have to swap this. And we really felt good. Like, I remember training that morning, we were out rowing, having the best session. But it wasn't to be. We had a big accident in that session. So we were coming around a corner on this lake. It's a natural lake, so it's not just a straight big swimming pool, basically, like we race on most of the time. And another boat, which was our British men's 8, came around the corner and cut the corner, and their boat just went straight into my back. We flipped over. I was in so much pain in my hip and in my back. I really felt like I'm gonna die here. This is serious.
Yeah.
And I thought I might drown. But someone pulled me out of the water, and it really calmed me down when they said, "There's a lot of blood." So I was like, whoa. They drove me back to land as quick as possible and laid me down on the floor, and then an ambulance came, put me on a spinal board and took me off to hospital. And with the limited sort of Portuguese and English interaction, they did a CT scan and found out that I've broken 5 bones in my spine, and that's all they said. Now, I'm not a spinal expert, I know a lot more now because of all this, but at the time it was kind of like, this is bad. Like, if you break your back, as far as I was aware, like, break your back paralysed, that's kind of how I knew things. And I definitely won't be at the Olympics in a year's time. That's kind of what I was thinking. This is no chance. But actually, well, I then got taken off to a different hospital, and I spent about a week. Still in Portugal. I spent about a week there whilst the travel insurance company and my health insurance company argued about who was going to pay for my flight home, because I had to fly lying flat. Ended up being the travel insurance company, so they had to pay. I flew back in an air ambulance and stayed a bit longer in hospital in the UK. And during that time, I went through a few different stages in my head. The first was just feeling angry and sorry for myself. Like, am I going to get better? What's going on? In Portugal, it was difficult because there wasn't that much. I didn't understand what was going on. There was not really much English speaking. Once I came back to England, I felt a lot better because I got seen that day by a surgeon in the UK who's English, and he just said, now, he'd looked at all my scans and all the data, and he said, you are going to make a full recovery, or the best part of a full recovery is going to take a long time. But I felt relieved because I wasn't worried about it taking a long time. I just wanted to know that I was going to be able to live my life normally.
Full recovery was a key.
I just wanted to be able to do stuff. And I'd already, in my head, I'd already kind of decided, well, there's no way I'm going to the Olympics in the year. Of course not, that's ridiculous. But then I did think, after he said about a full recovery, I thought about it and thought, well, if I'm going to really make a full recovery, I'm going to have to be really involved in this. It won't just happen. My body won't just heal. You have to go and rehabilitate. If the way for me to do this, I still need to aim to go to the Olympics in a year. Because if I do, I was very fortunate. I had a lot of physio support and health support as an athlete. Like, I don't know how people get past this kind of stuff on their own, but I'm going to, if I aim for the very top still, I'll be much better at doing all of the kind of accessory exercises the physio will give me, all of the sort of elastic band things that they'll make me do that you probably can't really be bothered to do, and those things. If I really aim for the top, I'll make a full recovery. That was kind of how I thought about it.
Jack, what stage was this at? Were you still flat on your back? Had you had an operation when this is going through your head?
I started off flat on my back,
So you'd not had the op?
I didn't even have an op in the end. It was just, I just had to rest for a long, long time. And then it really, so the recovery started off after about, sorry, what were you going to say?
The key words from the surgeon saying you're going to make a full recovery, was that the light bulb moment that set things running in your mind?
It was.
To say, well, in that case then, your first thought was, well, that's great, I can live a normal life. But then your second thought was, back to the Olympics.
Yeah, really. And then the next phrase he said was, it will take a long time. And that was the thing for me, was how long? Because of course, I don't have very long. It's now September, and the Olympics is in August next year. We've got some work to do. And the recovery really started slowly. So it was like starts with just being able to sit on the end of a bed and stand up without getting too dizzy, then walk to the end of a room, then walk to the end of a corridor, then up some stairs, and after a few weeks, can you walk for half an hour? And then can you sit on an exercise bike and cycle with low resistance? And it was very, very tedious, sort of slow stuff. And all the while, my teammates were doing 3 sessions a day, getting better and better and better. The rest of the world is doing 3 sessions a day, getting better and better. And for me, I was doing what I can, but it was not that. But after it must have been 2 months, I got to go on a rowing machine very lightly with no resistance for just a couple of minutes. And
2 months from accident? From accident D-Day, so was that 2 months after?
2 months from the accident, And after 4 months, I was allowed to do normal full training in a boat. So it was a lot quicker than we thought it would be, actually, a lot quicker. Thank goodness, because the recovery was very, very hard. But this was now December, so after 4 months, and I thought, well,
what year?
2015. I thought, okay, well, maybe I've still got a shot at making this Olympics in 2016, maybe. So I really threw myself at training, and of course still had to do a lot of accessory work and stuff to keep things balanced, but got through to the Olympic trials in March, where the top 7 would get picked for the Olympic Games. I finished 8th, and I was like, okay, well, that's disappointing. But the head coach, he said, look, chap, we're really impressed actually how well you've recovered and got back to things. I can't pick you because the other 7, they've earned their spots, and you understand that, and of course I do. But he said, I would like you to be our reserve for the team. And a few years ago I was delighted to be the reserve, and then now I was kind of like, all right. But the thing is, he said, I want you to be a reserve. Unfortunately, we can't bring you to Brazil because they only have a certain number of quota of athlete spaces. So I want you to train with us all the way up until the last day. So I did. It's a team sport, and we want to be a good supporter for each other. And a lot of the time people are injured or ill during training, so a lot of the time I will be in and out of the boat, and I was. In fact, some of the big races before the Olympics, people couldn't race, and I was in the boat for those. I still maintain that all their best results were actually the times I was in the boat.
Of course.
I still remind some of them about that. 8 years on, not bitter at all.
Some great mental strength, though. Where did that come from? Where's your mental strength? Can you put a finger on where the mental strength came from?
I think it's just you don't really have a choice, do you? You can give up. That's one option. But I think that's the harder option. I think it's easier to put yourself through whatever you need to get the thing you want because you want it. I think to give up it's the easy option in that moment, but it's kind of, I think it would eat at you for longer. Whereas putting yourself in some discomfort in the aim of the thing that you really want, it's like, of course, it's like type 2 fun, isn't it? People say type 2 fun is those things that aren't fun in that moment, but you look back and go, that was great. I think it's that kind of thing. And that's what I've thought about is, of course, it'd be comfortable in that moment just to stop. But then I'd spend the rest of my life going, hey, hang on a minute, what?
And I wonder how big an impact, maybe you don't even fully realise now, when you talked back about the 2012 Olympics, the experience that you had, the emotions that you went through, the fact you got to see it all, just how big a mental picture that had created within your psychology to then get you through all of it.
Well, definitely that.
You were holding on to that. I want to be at the Olympics.
And what you said about afterwards about being all in. I'd already decided I'm all in, so you can't, if I'm all in, I can't just step out now. You're in. You're there. So, brilliant. And also, it didn't even feel like a choice. It didn't feel like a decision that needed to be made. There was one option for me, and that's what I'm going to take.
Excellent.
So I trained with them up until the Olympics and went on all the last camps. Accepted the fact that I wasn't going, and even the day before they flew, actually, I was in the boat because someone had a dodgy back and they just wanted to protect it. And then they all went off to the airport, and I went home. A very weird feeling because we lived in each other's pockets, and now they're all off. I felt like there was some dust in the car or something, so I had a few tears actually driving out the training centre. So not because I was disappointed that I wasn't racing, but I was disappointed not to be going with the squad.
Right.
I've seen how much hard work they'd all done. I wanted to be there and see them achieve their goals. The next morning, I got a missed call from the head of British Rowing, and he was not someone that really calls you up for a chat. It's like, he was kind of like the demon headmaster. He's called Sir David Tanner. I thought it must be a mistake because he's in Brazil, and so I left it, and he called again. I watched it ring. I was thinking, like, I don't know about answering this. Like, this is too, because he doesn't call. I thought he'd only ever really call me up to if there's something wrong.
Yes.
And he called me 1/3 time. I answered. He said, "How was training this morning?" "Oh yeah, it was fine, thanks." He said, "One of the guys, Graham, has come down with a bit of a cold since the flight. We might need you to come out for a few days just to cover the training, and then while he recovers." Okay. And he said, "Well, I don't know what we're going to do yet. I'll give you a call later on and let you know if we need you to come out." And I'm sat there in
so
my...
he's only half asking you.
Yeah, exactly. I was just like, this is very weird. He said, "What are your plans over the next 3 weeks?" I said, "Well, they're free because I know that I had to be free just in case, but obviously that's never going to happen." Anyway, I got another call 20 minutes later. He said, "We booked you on the flight at 12 from Heathrow. Get there, don't tell anyone." It's like, okay, man, this is really, really weird. I said, "How much stuff do I need to bring? What are we doing?" He said, "Look, I don't actually know." He said, "Hopefully you'll just be coming for 3 or 4 days and then you go back home again." I was thinking, well, hopefully not. Like, that's not what I want. I was thinking they wouldn't be calling me up like this if it wasn't really important.
Yeah.
So of course I had to get to the airport. So I called my dad. "Dad, can you give me a lift to Heathrow?" "Yeah, of course, where are you going?" "Can't tell you that." And I think by saying that, I basically told him exactly where I was going. It's like everywhere in the news was just Olympic stuff, right? Of course. So he drove me to Heathrow. I went and checked in and got to the gate, where straight away there were like 3 rowing journalists. They're like, "Oh, what are you doing here? You're not meant to be here." I was kind of like, also I didn't really know.
Well,
so I was kind of just like, I don't know what's going on. But I got on the plane and there was the first 2 people I saw were Andy Murray and Chris Froome. The whole plane was pretty much athletes off the Olympics or broadcasters or any of that.
Yeah.
And I was just there in my normal clothes, just normal passenger, because I hadn't been selected or had any of the sort of Team GB kit given to me, any of that. Spent about 10 hours flying to Rio, and that whole journey was kind of a mind game of my sort of expectations. Like, they wouldn't have called me up and brought me so hastily if it wasn't really important. But I've had so many times thinking I should be in this, get my shot, and not got it and been disappointed. I don't want to have that feeling again. And it was really that, just flicking between those for that whole journey. I landed and got a taxi to the hotel where all of the coaches greeted me like the kind of prodigal son. And they're not normally that, they're quite standoffish normally. And, it's, "Jack, how's the flight? What can we get you?" Most of the athletes had gone to bed by now. And I remember they brought over a place of dinner that had been sort of clean filmed over. And one by one, they all came and sat with me. Doctor, psychologist, head coach of the men's quad boat, which I won a medal in Tokyo in, and the performance director, the one who called me, said, "Jack, we need to talk to you about what will happen over the next few days. It's quite big news." Now, when he said that, I knew what the news was going to be, and my hands started shaking, and he explained that Graham's unfortunately going to have to get withdrawn, which is gutting for him, and that I'll now be racing in the Rio Olympics.
Wow.
It's like, in one hand, it was everything I'd wanted. Over this last couple of years of being a reserve, you just want your opportunities, but you don't want them because you don't want them at the expense of your mate.
Yeah.
You also don't want them, you want to have earned it. You want to have been selected because of your performance on merit rather than someone else's misfortune. I went up to my hotel, up to the room, and I sat there and felt really sad knowing that somewhere else in that building, one of my mates that I train with every day has just had his dream pulled away from him. So I called my dad again and explained what had happened, and I woke him up. It was 2 a.m. in the UK by now. I said, I don't know what to think. And he said something that really stuck with me was, there are 3 other guys in that boat that really need you right now. So whilst this is heartbreaking for Graham, I'm so gutted for him, those other 3 have worked just as hard as Graham, and they need you to do your job. That's absolutely right. Like, we are a team sport. There's more than 4 of us in the boat, and in a way, like, I was not doing my job by worrying about Graham. Of course I was being a caring friend and whatever, but actually it was a flip, like, right, well, we're here, we need to do our best.
Yeah.
So now in Rio, we didn't quite get the medal that we'd have wanted to get. We finished in 5th place. We were in 3rd place through halfway.
Right.
And actually was like, okay, can we do this? But probably the lack of cohesion and time spent together just didn't quite pay off in that last bit. You know, at the Olympics, everyone is absolutely prepared.
Yeah.
So we were very disappointed immediately after the race, and I remember we were on BBC Sport having an interview just as the medal ceremony for our race was happening, which was a really horrible thing. You can hear the sort of German national anthem going on, and we're just beside it, basically seeing them get the medals that you'd have liked to have tried to get. But what someone said to us after was they don't think any other team would have been able to do what we did and get someone out from another country, fly across the world and still make the final.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So looking back, actually, we did a really good job.
Yeah.
It just didn't seem it at the time.
Yeah.
I think that thing about expectations changing.
Yeah.
Sometimes you look back and go, well, maybe I should have been expected different.
Yeah.
After that, I figured I'm not going to be a reserve anymore. I decided I'm not going to be a reserve anymore.
Cool.
That's it. I'm a bit older now, so I was 22 in Rio. I was the youngest member of the team.
Yeah.
For the next 4 years, I need to get it right.
You're back home from Rio. You're the youngest member of the team.
Yeah.
But you've now made a decision, as you just said. You've decided that you're not going to be the reserve.
Yeah. Like it's like I look back on Rio and the race. Okay, we were disappointed to come 5th. I know that I can compete at this level. I've done it now. I've been in Olympic finals, so that's really cool. I know that I've got a lot of track to sort of run in terms of my development. I just need to make sure that I do all the things right now between now and the next 4 years. Now, we also had a great time in Rio, right? One thing I didn't mention was actually it's an amazing thing to be at the Olympics, and it was so unexpected for me. It was kind of like a whirlwind. So we did the competing. Of course, that's cool. There's a much bigger spotlight on the sport than there is most of the time. Rowing is normally quite a minority sport, but at the Olympics it's huge because teams would be quite good at it, and you get a lot of everyone you know is watching your races, which is really nice.
Expectation.
Yeah, and also we got to meet loads of different people from all around the world, from all different sports, and staying in the Olympic Village and all these things was a really, really special thing, and so lucky to have got to experience that. But yeah, it was back to business, right? And there were a few things I just thought I need to do differently if I want to make sure I'm definitely there. The first one was, and they're not things I was doing badly before, I just wanted to really make sure I did them well. And I don't even know if they made the difference, but in my head there were things that are different that I'm going to do. The first one was that I was going to try and sleep for 1 hour longer each night. So instead of going to bed at 10:30, I was trying to go to bed at 9:30, which just meant, and it wasn't, I never did anything important in that time from 9:30 to 10:30. So I thought, well, I can just cut that out. Mm-hmm. But the way I had to think about it was, I put so much into this sport, all the training I do, all the hard stuff, all the holidays I might not go on, or family events I might miss, or these things. Why not just go the extra 1%? Yeah, that's what it felt like. Like it seems silly. Like I don't want to get to Tokyo and think, oh, I could have done that, and that. Let's just do it now for this 4 years. And so going to sleep earlier, because I felt like if I have just 1 hour of sleep longer a night, that's actually nearly a night's sleep over the week. Yeah. Each week, that's quite a lot of difference. And if that's where your body does a lot of your recovering and all of that stuff, let's try it. So,
what about your teammates, Jack? Were they doing other little things as well?
I don't know. Right. So the thing with our teammates is actually we went after the Olympics or after each race, you kind of go back to being competitors. Yeah. So of course, I wanted them to be the best they could be. Yes. But I just focused on me. Yes. Because if I can be the best me I can be, I hope that they'll actually be better than me. Yeah. But only 3 of them, so I can. Sure. What I always thought was I want to be the worst person in my boat, but know that I'm as good as I can be. Right. Because then if they're better, great. I think that's probably a nicer feeling than feeling like you're the best and you're carrying everyone. Sure. So it felt like that was quite a nice attitude of like, right. So the other thing I thought about was just being a bit smarter with my nutrition. So there's loads of sort of sports science data you can. But one thing I thought was I need to have. We always got told you should have 20 grams of protein within 20 minutes of finishing a workout. But we didn't always do it. We all knew all these amazing theories, and you'd have thought at the top end, like the sort of top end of sport, you'd be better at that kind of stuff. But I think all these things we've done on our way up, they kind of got lost in just the thought that we just wanted to train hard. Right. So we trained very hard and forgot about those things. So in those 4 years after Rio, I made sure that every single training session I brought a protein shake in the boat with me. So the moment it finished, I'd drink it. And it was like a very, it sometimes seemed like a silly thing, because I did it even when we had easy sessions. I just made it a routine that I had so many different protein shakers at my house, so because we were washing these things up constantly. But if it was something that made me feel like I'm doing everything I can. I don't even know if it made the difference, but in my head it was like, I know that I'm dotting the I's and crossing the T's, and that was important for me.
2 great positive habits there.
Yeah, it was just making these things that could make me feel like, okay, when I sit on the start line, I know I've done what I can.
Yeah.
Even if those aren't really what makes a difference, it didn't really matter. I know I've decided to do it, because one psychologist who worked with us before said, he said, winners choose to win and losers choose to lose. Now, it's not quite that. You don't sit there on the start line and go, I'm going to win this race, and then you just guarantee a win. But you do, but you don't choose. You do choose it then, because you choose to do a very good performance, and when it gets hard, to keep pushing. But you choose it every day.
Yeah.
You choose all of the little decisions you make along the way that get you there. That you're choosing to win 100%. When you make that protein shake. You're choosing to win when you go to bed an hour earlier, and you're choosing to lose when you don't.
Yeah.
I think with those things, and I think that was actually really powerful. And the guy who taught me that, well, I owe a lot to him actually, because one thing I'd say on the start line to the guys was, let's decide to get it right, because you're the ones that choose whether or not you do a good performance now, and we just make sure, like, and I don't know if it sounded silly or not, but it was like, let's not leave it to chance. There's so much we can control. We can't control how fast everyone else is, but we can control how fast we are.
Yeah.
And that's something we can control every single day. So that next few years was all about that, and I wasn't at reserve again, which was very nice. In fact, I started winning medals at the World Championships and at the European Championships each year, and at Henley Regatta, which is another big one for us. And
was it always a 4? Was it always?
No. Sometimes in single, sometimes in a double.
Yeah.
I prefer the quad though. I like a big team.
Yeah.
I like being with 3 other guys and have a bit more of what's the right word? Camaraderie with them, because that's, when you're training very hard, you need to be able to bounce some fun off each other, I think, to bring it back.
Great stuff.
But then just before so we were training very, very hard, and like I said, that we went all back to being competitors after the Olympics, and you have to earn your seat again completely for the next one. No one has a head start, and we kind of got into a bit of a situation where no one really ranked higher than anyone coming towards the 2020 Olympics 1 year out. So that 2019 World Championships, we all did okay. None of us won medals in the events that we wanted to. We were kind of like not sure the combinations of boats were quite right. So we went back to training, everyone like out for blood. So we all started really, every single session, really trying to overdo it, really trying to beat the person next to you. And like the camaraderie was fine, but actually my performance really started to suffer. I think that I was actually training too hard. So the long sessions that are meant to be hard, meant to be long and easy, I was doing hard because I wanted to beat the next person. Actually, I was just digging myself into a hole and not letting myself recover properly between sessions. And although I was still sleeping properly and eating right, I was just really burning the candle too fast.
The rhythm wasn't right.
Just we had this sort of winter before the Olympics. I was training very hard. A lot of my performances weren't what I want on the rowing machine. On the water, I still did okay. So I technically still had the same movements and stuff, but the actual physiology wasn't quite there. So a lot of our ranking was done on the machine, because they want to have the raw power, and then half of our ranking is done on the water too. And everything on the water I did great, but on the machine I was just going down and down and down, and I wasn't even getting scores. I was getting similar scores to when I was a teenager, really, and I was just like, so to deal with that, I would train harder, and then it just kept going further down. And we had our Olympic trials just before the pandemic really kicked off, and I came in 3rd in the single, and I thought that would be a guarantee, you're in, but actually it wasn't. So the coaches were kind of like, you need to do some more testing, there's a couple of people we rank higher than you at the moment. I said, well, how do you mean? I've just come 3rd. Or do you mean I've just beaten them? And they said, well, we take a more holistic view of the ranking than that. So I felt, honestly, I really just wanted to just stop. In fact, I wanted to lose, because if I lost, then they'd cut me and just go, it'd be a shame that I hadn't made the Olympics, but whatever, it was done, because it felt so uncomfortable. But we went out and did this testing, and it was like a boxer that's been up against the ropes and he's come out swinging. I just went swing, and fortunately I did win all of those tests, and they named our Olympic team privately to the team members the day before lockdown started.
Yeah.
And I was the last person that they named. So they're reading it. They really had us all out in front of the training centre, because we weren't allowed inside by then. They were sort of saying COVID, right? You've got to be careful. And they read out all of these names, and I was just, I knew that they were getting towards the end, but they hadn't read mine yet, and I was the last one that they read. Wow. And I was like, oh my God, that's such a relief, such a relief. Flipped. I just felt delighted. Just honestly to have had that selection, and this time I've gone through so much difficulty, and this time they picked me for me, not because of Graham or not any of that.
You earned it on merit, yeah.
Well but then a week later they cancelled the Olympics.
Sure.
So and the next day we all got an email basically saying that selection we gave you last week is cancelled. And we all got sent home. So we got sent home with a rowing machine. Like many people worked from home for a long time. So we trained at home for 6 months, all on our own. We just had a rowing machine, a training program, and crack on. Now for me, it was probably the best thing that could have happened.
Right.
I think had we done the Olympics in 2020, we wouldn't have got a medal.
Right.
Because I wasn't good enough. I wasn't in my best form.
Okay.
The other three were fine. They were okay. I think we were all still better the next year, but I think, they were doing all right. But I think I'd just been so overdoing it, and the pandemic for me couldn't have come at a better time. It gave me a rest. I didn't take time off, but I could just train on my own. I didn't have someone either side of me that I wanted to beat.
You weren't overdoing it.
Yeah, I did a lot of research. I read a lot of sort of journals about sports performance and training zones and this kind of stuff. And I've read about what they do in cross-country skiing and cycling and how they best maximise people's training.
And were you still doing the sleep thing? And
in fact, I was sleeping even more.
Nutrition,
I really, really was like, okay, I need to sort of make it a better holistic.
Consolidate everything together.
Yeah, and the biggest change I made in the pandemic, I bought a heart rate belt, which sounds like such a basic thing.
Yeah.
Loads of people use heart rate belts who are nowhere near international level sport, but we didn't really use them in the team. We just went off kind of our feel a lot more, or the scores. Yeah. And I read a lot of these journals, and it's kind of worked out these heart rate zones that I should be training in for different sessions, and I was very strict to them. And a lot of I read this one article, and it basically suggests that in your long training you should feel guilty that it wasn't harder at the end. And so I kind of made that a bit of a mantra for a lot of my training, was I want to get to the end of that and go, oh, that should have been a bit harder. And during that time training at home, we were kind of blessed with very nice weather that year, and it was very fortunate, but I could get up when I wanted, train on my own, do it, send in my scores, which I did, but actually I started to fall in love with it again, and I started to feel good again. Yeah. And I actually started to itch to go training again and go, I was like, oh, actually I wanted to do more. So I was, and when I went back, so after 6 months we were allowed back to our training centre in September, and I was so excited to be there. And I've made it very clear to my coach that I'm not going to get drawn into any silly competitive stuff, so not to expect it. Yeah. And don't be telling me that my scores in just the normal training need to be faster, because this is the science that I'm working to. And he was like, okay, well you thought about it. So
challenging the status quo.
Yeah, kind of. And actually that year, coming into the Tokyo Olympics, I didn't miss any training. I didn't get sick, I didn't get injured. Yeah. Most of the time we'd miss a fair amount. Like you'd end up missing 1, 2, 3 weeks of training in the year due to different bits of catching a cold or hurting your back or whatever. I didn't miss anything. Wow. It meant that come the Olympics, I've done 150 kilometers more training than anyone in our team. Wow. Because just from not getting sick. Yeah. So we all did the same program.
The best version of yourself.
Exactly, yeah. So when we got to selection for the Tokyo Olympics, it didn't even feel like a question. I was one of the top ones to get picked this time. It was like, of course, Jack's done all the training, he's been performing really well, and he's done this. And it felt great. Honestly, it felt great just to get picked and not worry about it, not be on the edge, and then go off the Olympics feeling like we actually are in the best possible shape and ready to sort of take on the rest of the world.
Once you were at the Olympics in Tokyo, Jack, how many times did you actually compete? How many races?
We had 3 races in Tokyo, so we have a heat. In the heats, the top 2 would make it directly to the final, and the remainder would race in a repechage race to where the top 2 from that would make the final. Now, in the heat, I think we turned up a little bit. I think it's very easy to get overexcited at the Olympics,
right?
Because it's the Olympics, it's huge, it's so big, and there's so much talk about it. It's it's your biggest race, and for me, I knew it was probably my last race. And same with my teammate Angus. The other 2 were a bit younger; they stuck around. In fact, one of them was only 6 weeks younger, but he's younger. I think that we were so concerned about this for our heat that we actually under motivated, I guess, not motivated, but under aroused. So we were sat on the start line a bit too calm. And in the first sort of 10 seconds of the race, we just gave up 3 or 4 meters to everyone, just because I think we were so worried about over-egging it that we under-egged it. And we spent the rest of the race just catching up, and we finished in 3rd. It was like, that's not what we were expecting. Netherlands, who were the world champions before, they beat us, expected that. Australia, we didn't know how good they were because they'd been in the other side of the world, and COVID meant we couldn't really travel. So, and they beat us. It was like, that's back to the drawing board, really. Like we've not made the final yet. And there's only 2 more spots for the final, and we have 2 days in 2 days' time. We have to do this race. So we went back and was like, right, what we're going to do differently? How are we going to approach this? We need to make sure that from the go, we are off. And so the next day we had a day of a training day, and we were just practicing our starts and being really, really sort of bullish with that. And we had this repechage race, and honestly, I've never been so nervous for anything. It's much more nerve-wracking than the final, because you can't win a medal if you don't get to the final, right? So it is the final, because if you don't get through that, there's no chance. So I remember lining up for the start and just feeling sick with nerves, really sick. But we got it right. And maybe it was that pressure. We needed that bit of pressure just to go, right, guys, let's get this on. We won the repechage, we qualified for the final. And then we sat down as a team and tried to sort of flip our mindset, because you could say that it's a disadvantage having had to do an extra race. And the other people that qualified directly, the 4 boats that qualified directly have had a bit of a rest. And we thought about it, it's like, well, actually no, we train so hard every day that we can recover from 1 more 6-minute race, that's fine. And actually, what the people that didn't race today is they've not had the chance to improve like we have. So actually, we're going to turn up to the final having had an extra chance to be better, whereas those lot have had a day off and they'll have just stayed the same. Which was quite a nice way to think about it.
And you said at the start you wanted to try and mix things up a bit. What did you mean by that for the final?
We knew that, so in all the races we'd done that year, we'd come sort of around 3rd or 4th.
Right.
The last one we'd come 3rd, and that had all of the sort of, apart from Australia, all the good countries who were going to be at the Olympics were there. So we knew we were up in and around medal potential. We've typically not been the quickest out at the start. Even though when we trained at home we could do it, I don't know what it was on the race day that meant that we were slow out at the start. I don't know. I think that we were just a bit too careful and worried that we would worried we'd get too tired halfway through the race. But on, I think I alluded to at the start, like on the finals day, because we knew that we could get a medal, we thought that on our best day we might be able to get a silver medal. We didn't really think it was realistic for gold, because the Netherlands really were a standout team. But we also knew that on a bad day we could come 6th. So we just thought, right, let's go for gold. Let's aim for gold, because if we aim for gold we might get silver. We might come 6th anyway. And if we come 6th, that's not out of the realms of where we might come anyway, because it is a tight field.
That reminds me of the analogy, shoot for the stars and you might just reach the moon.
Exactly that.
It's exactly the same principle you apply.
And I think that's really good for everything. In a way, it's annoying because it almost sets you up for like guaranteed disappointment, right? If you always aim for the highest, but also it means you're going to be better than if you didn't. I think it's and we drove into the lake that day, and It was a very windy day.
Right.
The lake was incredibly rough.
Yeah.
It was exactly what we'd expected. Now, when we're planning, we plan everything. We look at what the sort of wind forecasts are for years, like what the trends and what they expect in July. And we expected a big, strong tailwind.
Yeah.
That week so far, it hadn't been a big, strong tailwind. So we were like, oh, maybe we were wrong. But all of our time training for the years, we were going out whenever it was really windy. We were making sure we practiced in it, and we were like, this is Tokyo conditions, and we would be, and even days where you didn't want to go out. So, I mean, in the winter, really horrible days where there's like, the only reason the lake's not frozen is because it's windy and blowing around. We'd go out and just practice and practice. And that day, for the finals day, it was exactly the Tokyo conditions that we had imagined, that it hadn't been all week. So the bus drove in, and we were like, okay, this is good. This is what we want. It's quite difficult to row in strong windy conditions because the waves make it's hardest to get your oars in and out of the water cleanly. It's easy to get them caught in the waves.
And you practice for that.
Exactly, we practiced for it, and everyone expected it. Like, everyone knew that Tokyo could be like this, and if they did their homework at least anyway.
Yeah.
So we got to the start of the final, and we'd agreed that we're going to go off as hard as we can. Put everyone else under pressure. It's not nice rowing when you're under pressure anyway, if you feel like someone's ahead of you that shouldn't be, especially not when it's windy like that.
Yeah.
So we just thought, let's go, attack it, and let's make some people make some mistakes.
Yeah.
Like my coach would always say, it's just A to B as fast as you can. You can't influence everyone else.
Yes.
You kind of can though, I think. So if you put pressure on people, you can influence other people. And so we shot out. We really shot out, and we led the Olympic final. So through 500 metres, we were ahead. Between 500 metres and 1,000 metres, Italy, who were probably the favourites for silver, they looked over at us and caught their baits in the water, and they lost about 4 seconds, just there.
So they're out the equation.
Out of it, no chance of winning a medal anymore.
Yeah.
And then we were like, okay, let's go. And we were still leading at halfway. I looked across to the side and I saw the Netherlands were in second behind us. And I remember thinking, like, we've got 2.5 minutes here. Are we going to win the Olympics? And that's when I thought, right, Jack, you need to focus.
Yeah.
Why are you thinking about that right now? You should be thinking about each individual stroke, getting it right, pulling hard, getting it right. Don't think about what might or might not be around your neck in 5 minutes. And with 500 metres to go, we were dead level with the Netherlands, who again were world champions. And that's about 1 minute 20 left to go of the race. 1 minute 20 left to go of rowing for me, really, of international rowing.
Yeah.
And in most of our races, we'd had a very good sprint finish, normally quicker than theirs. So I was like, okay, it's on. This is really on. Now, I think our hard start started to catch up with us towards the end. So Netherlands did pull ahead of us. And actually, Italy and Poland and Australia started to really catch up.
Okay.
And when you're rowing, you can see them catching up because you're going backwards. And it's not a very nice feeling.
Yeah.
And the boys on the course, they turn red when there's 200 metres to go.
Right.
And we saw the boys turn red and it's like, okay, this is the last 30 seconds. And but you could just see these boats catching up. And it's the finish line's not getting there quickly enough. And I remember just thinking, sort of last 10 strokes of the race, let's just heave on this thing as hard as you can. Like I remember actually thinking, the technique doesn't matter, just pull that thing, push that foot plate thing away as hard as you can. And we heard a beep for the finish line,
which was the
Netherlands, and then we just had beep beep beep.
Oh wow!
And it's like and I don't know about you, but like, would you say you're optimist?
Yeah.
I think I'm an optimist too, but I think no human's really optimistic. I thought in my head in that moment, it was like we've nailed it and almost done the perfect race, and we've come fourth.
Right.
That's what we've done. We've come fourth. Those others have caught us up, and we've come fourth. And actually, then I heard a big roar from behind me, and I looked up and saw the scoreboard and saw GBR next to number 2.
Amazing.
And honestly, I can't think of a better feeling.
Yeah.
It was just the most fantastic thing.
Yeah. Great
Britain had never actually won a medal at the Olympics in our boat class.
Right.
We've got lots of tradition in rowing, but not sculling, which is rowing with 2 oars like what we did.
Yeah.
So for us, it was a massive thing to get a medal. The only way I can describe the feeling of winning that is like absolute elation. Like I can't think of anything that I'd have changed.
Yeah.
even the people that beat us, they actually got the world record in that race.
Yeah.
So
you pushed them through.
yeah, so they've done something that no one else has ever done, hasn't done since, and we were the next best. So I think like looking back, that's it was honestly incredible. I'm so
and no
so proud of
cocks
it.
or anything. So how do you motivate each other while you're doing that race, or was it all how you described?
Well, we do talk to each other a little in the boat when we're racing.
Yeah.
So you can't always hear everything.
Yeah.
But there's Angus, who was the one that was in the boat with me when I broke my back. We've been doing it together since we were 15 or something.
Yeah.
He sort of made our normal sort of strategic decisions during the race, but we normally agreed everything. We had a plan, and we would very rarely go off that plan. Very, very rarely, because we all wanted to know what to expect during the race.
Yeah.
It was only if something went really wrong we'd go off the plan. But what happened in the last bit, when it started getting a bit hairy towards the end, Harry, who was the guy right at the back of the boat, he doesn't really speak very much normally, but there was a lot of shouting going on from him, like just calling us like go, and I didn't realise, because I was at the front of the boat, I'm the last one to cross the line. I thought we would come fourth. He said he knew all along.
Did he?
Yeah, he was like, oh yeah, I knew we were second. Because he's closer to the finish line.
Yes, of course.
He can see the ends of the other boats, whereas I can. And he was like, oh yeah, I don't know what you're worried about.
But the positive noises he was making actually encouraged you all, do you think?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. You know what? I wish I could relive it. It was such a cool. Like, I can watch videos back and stuff, but I'd love to be able to just go and feel that feeling again. Yeah. And again, getting our medals, it was just like, you can't really. It was a dream for so long, and it's like, this is just the most amazing thing.
And your dream became reality. Very well done.
So proud of it, and you know, a lot of people straight away were like, you know, what's next? But for me, I was like, hey, hang on a minute,
you'd achieved it.
I've done what I want to do here. I'm done.
Yes,
I'm done. This is great.
Which is important. Sometimes people do talk about the what next, but sometimes it's really important to focus on celebrating success, actually celebrating the achievement that you've made.
And I think if I was to say to the current athletes, I work as a mentor now for the current team, is make sure you celebrate the things along the way. Because you don't know when it's going to be your last. You don't know when you might get injured, you don't know when you might not be good enough. But just celebrate everything. Every small event where you might win a medal or anything, really enjoy it, because you don't know when it's coming. And also, everyone at these races, they are the best in the world. They're trying their hardest. They're training every day, 3 times, 4 times, whatever a day, to beat you. So if you do well and manage to get a medal, you've done incredibly well. Whether it's bronze, silver, gold, whatever. Like, it's not promised that just because Great Britain has a tradition of rowing doesn't mean we're always going to win. We don't get a head start for that. Like, every little win you might get along the way, just really celebrate.
Totally agree with that.
100%.
And we talk a lot about going from where you are now to where you're trying to get to. And you've given us loads of golden nuggets, silver nuggets as well, to help other people to do that. In terms of focusing on getting some rich mental images and pictures and sounds about what you're trying to do, what you're trying to achieve. You've then gone through an incredible process. In terms of reflecting back on all of that period, Jack, what's the one thing that you really learned from it all?
I think that the main thing is you can do a lot more than you think you can. I think that's
brilliant.
Like, you can tolerate a lot more load than probably more mental load, I guess, than you might think you're capable of if you just do it. Like, people sometimes say if you want something done, ask a busy person. And I think it's kind of the same thing. Like, I think all of us are probably more capable than we let on, because we allow ourselves to be a bit like lazy sometimes, or a bit, which is important too as well. Sometimes you need to be able to do that. But I think we can all operate at a higher level than we ever once thought. But it doesn't just happen. You have to just gradually build these things, and you go, actually, you know what? I can deal with that. I can perform at that. I can take on that extra thing. Like, actually, we can all be really quite effective.
Fantastic, Jack. That's been absolutely brilliant. Thanks for sharing the story. We're going to have another episode in due course, which moves on, and we do find out a little bit about what happened next. But in the meantime, thank you ever so much for that.
Thank you.
Thank you.